am thrilled to introduce our coach, our guest coach today. She's a guest and someone new that I get to introduce to everyone, but someone who's well known to me. I had the pleasure and the distinct honor of working with Lisa in the federal space, not just as a colleague, but she was a very influential person for me in my own career and professional development, and as a coach as well. So it is my honor, without further ado, to introduce you all to Lisa Rees. She is a highly regarded professional who believes in the power of trust and emotional intelligence to build strong relationships and successful organizations. She has a wealth of experience and expertise and has dedicated her career to supporting leaders at all levels and helping them create safe and inclusive cultures. She's the owner of LTR Leadership. She provides skill building, coaching, and practice opportunities to develop emotional skills competencies in leaders. And don't we need more and more of that, especially nowadays? Her approach focuses on earning trust, leveraging emotions, and achieving goals. Lisa's work experience spans an impressive 37 years with U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, where I had the opportunity to work with her and have her as a valued colleague and mentor. And during this time, she served as a leadership coach, as a senior leader, and a finance and budget expert, making significant contributions to the organization. Towards the end of her federal career, Lisa developed leadership development programs for senior leaders within the agency and taught emotional intelligence at the Naval Postgraduate School, the U.S. Marshal Service, and the Department of Homeland Security's Office of Biometrics. She became an International Coaching Federation professional certified coach in 2015. She's also certified in emotional intelligence and has written several books and journal articles on EI with her colleague David Caruso. She's earned a master's degree in public administration from Norwich University and holds a bachelor's degree in management and an associate's degree in accounting, both from Champlain College. And without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Lisa.
Yeah, thanks, Eileen. Thank you. It is so great to be with all of you, to be with my fellow coaches. I don't often do this. Honestly, yesterday I did a 2.5 hour workshop with federal government officials. I tend to work mostly with those people that tend to be a little skeptical about emotional intelligence, who consider it a soft skill, a fluffy skill. And that's why I call it the hard skills of emotional intelligence. So I want to welcome all of you. I'm looking forward to a really, hopefully, an interactive uh, hour and a half together. I want you to feel free to unmute yourself, to put in chat questions, take care of yourself during it. And I know that we all live really busy lives. So I just want to take a moment, and we all know this as coaches, to center ourselves. Maybe you just came from a meeting. Maybe you have a meeting right after this. So just take a moment to let's make sure that your feet are on the ground, you feel relaxed, you're grounded. I feel joy just being with all of you. And just to take a deep breath for a moment. And I'd like to invite you in chat to put where you're calling in from. I'm from in Vermont, but where are you calling in from? And I'm going to challenge you a little bit to tell me with maybe one or two, how are you feeling? Give me a few emotion words, please, for how you're feeling right now. So in chat, where you're calling in from and how you're feeling using emotion words. Great. All right. Wow. I love it that people are all over the place. That's great. Awesome. Feeling overwhelmed and discouraged. Thanks for your honesty. Motivated, content, relaxed. So what we learn in emotional intelligence is that emotions are data. And so what you've done is you've given me a lot of information already because I don't know you. So you just gave me some really great information. And notice that Yes, of course, as a person who's about to do a coaching session or about to do a training session, yeah, I want you to feel curious, anticipation, joy, excitement, of course. But I also have to be honest that you could be feeling like somebody was very honest to say, I'm feeling a little discouraged, or maybe somebody's feeling overwhelmed. And so, again, I practice this thing called Q-tip, quit taking it personally, because chances are it has nothing to do with me. It just has to do with the circumstance. So, again, about emotional intelligence is just being curious. And whereas coaches, we're always curious. So, I invite you to stay open, but I also don't want to just talk at you. I want you to grab onto this information and apply it to your day-to-day lives and to your clients' lives. As Eileen says, I have been was in the federal workspace for decades. And you can imagine, being in the 80s, the 1980s, I was told to leave my emotion at the door. There was no room for crying. There's no room for crying in baseball, that Tom Hanks said. And, my boss did not have Kleenex in his office because he didn't want anybody crying. So, I grew up in that culture, but yet I had to follow who I was. And I'm a very emotional person. But what I've learned over the years is how you channel that emotion, and that there are no good or bad emotion. It's just really great information. It makes us human. So what I did is I went through my federal work career, and I realized I was most alive when I was mentoring, coaching, collaborating with others, when I felt connected to others. And yes, I was in budget and finance, but I had teams working with me. And I changed career fields. I did a 180. I went from a technical field, managing 42 people, doing, technical work, to becoming a leadership coach. I went to class. I got certified like all of you. I became an ACC, then a PCC. And what I discovered was when I went back to get my master's degree, any of you guys continual learners, like you're always learning? I mean, we're coaches, we're always learning, right? So when I went back to get my master's for public administration, I was reading leadership books. What makes the best leaders? And I don't know about you, but I have a bookcase right here with about a bazillion leadership books. And what I stumbled across in 2010 was emotional intelligence. I had never heard about it before. So, show of hands, and or you can use your icons. How many of you have heard about emotional intelligence, people? Yeah. And how many back in 2010 knew about it? Like 23, 13 years ago. Yeah. So see, I'm behind the times. So what I did was I looked at what EI was, and I noticed that there was a difference. There's EQ. How many of you have heard EQ? And there's EI. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk more about EI. And I really hope that at the end of this hour and a half, that you have a better understanding that there is a difference. And I'm not going to say that EQ and EI, there's one better over the other, because as you know, when you would do assessments, how many of you are certified in an EQ instrument? Anybody certified in EQ? Like EQI? Okay. How many of you have heard of the Mesquite, the measure emotional intelligence? Anybody? Yeah. Very few people though. And so what I did was when I was doing my dissertation for my master's, I decided to focus on the model I'm going to show you. And that's where the articles, the books, and in my training, and when I develop people's skills, this is what I use, the hard skills of emotional intelligence. All right. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And again, like I said, please feel free. And I'm going to ask Jimmy if you would monitor chat, because I tend to get so involved in that I don't check. So if you see a question or if you see somebody's hands up, thank you, Jimmy, for covering me. All right. So, as you know, for a teacher, you have to have course objectives. And I want to make sure that by the end of this, that you really clearly understand what it is, how it can be measured, but more importantly, how can you use this every day? So normally what I do is I put people into small groups. We don't have tons of people here today. So maybe what we could do is just reflect on these questions for a moment. And I'm going to invite you to unmute yourself to maybe share what emotions do you see and feel in your coaching practice, whether it's your own emotions or maybe the emotions you typically see from your clients. And how do these emotions impact your ability to coach? Meaning, do your emotions impact your ability at times? And what about your clients? So I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm just curious, what emotions are you dealing with? And does it have an impact in your ability to coach? So please unmute yourself.
I think this is an emotion. I found a lot of defensiveness, right? And fear to take a look at what's really going on.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're right. So defensiveness is our strategy. That's their strategy
Mm-hmm.
for the emotion they're feeling of this fear of, oh no, now I have to deal with this. So yeah. So that can definitely impact, and we're going to learn a little bit more about how that impacts our ability to go deeper with our clients. So thank you, Carol. Adriana, did you raise your hand?
Yes, it's sadness and anxiety. Those impact me a lot.
Okay. Okay. So right now, again, I'm not making an assessment at all. I'm just saying what is, like, because coaching is about the assessment, right? Going deeper. But I'm just curious about what you're seeing. So thank you. Alexander, what do you have?
Good day. First of all, I would like to say that I see some assurance sometimes, some happiness when he gets some insights. So, or as he or she feels uncomfortable. So that's a sign for me to look at myself, what I do wrong way.
Yeah. So it's good information for you to have when you're seeing, and we're going to go deeper into this. Like we see the emotion, but then what do we do with it? How do we respond? So thank you. Did somebody else have their hand up? I'm not sure, Jimmy. Anybody else?
I don't see any other hands up, but
okay.
I think we see sometimes frustration in sessions, or some of my favorite ones are enlightenment, if that's a feeling, where they feel like an insightful breakthrough, which is always awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, those are, So again, we may see at times a lot of unpleasant emotion, but boy, when we see those pleasant ones, when they're feeling a breakthrough and they're feeling happiness and joy or even contentment, we're like, wow, that was big. That was big. And that's why we do what we do, right?
Yep.
Well, that's why we coach. It's the good, the bad, and the ugly, but we have to go there. And that's why staying open to all emotion, it's really important as a leader, as a coach, to stay open and we're going to talk about that, how others' emotions can impact us.
Can I mention just one more real quick?
Absolutely.
Because everybody else is being so quiet right now for some reason. A sense of relief when either in the dialogue there's, because as coaches we acknowledge and validate, and they're just like, oh, thank God someone understands, or someone cares, or someone hears me, because they don't have anyone to share whatever it is with them. And so that sense of not just validation but relief that it's okay.
Yeah, thank you. So true. Anybody else? Joanna.
I'm just going to share that I went and got something that you probably can't see because I have
a mood meter. Yeah.
But I got this the other day, and it's literally like all these different feelings. You can't see the words on it, but maybe if I hold this one in front of me, this is my little tiny feelings wheel that I ordered, because it's helpful when people don't know Like they can't,
Yeah.
it's, what is it? They name it to tame it. Like if they can name what they're feeling. So
Yeah.
as I was looking at it, I was hearing all the, I was hearing a lot of the more negative emotions, or we perceive them to be. They talk about them on the mood meter. It talks about from negative to positive and low to high. So
Yeah. Well,
and anytime I label something negative, then I give myself a reaction to it. So I try not to do that. That's why I like feelings wheel a little bit better. But yeah, I think there's, I was trying to find some that hadn't been said. But sometimes people are lonely. Sometimes people, when on the more positive side, feeling proud, feeling accepted, feeling interested. There's so many different that we can play.
Yeah.
And that's
well,
why.
I'm really.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I'm excited that you brought that up, because we're going to talk about that, because we call it the mood map. David Caruso is his work is where the mood meter came from, and he's my colleague and the co-author of the books we wrote, and we call it the mood map. And we have established. I will send you actually the mood map that you can hand out and give to people as well without buying them. Because David Caruso is part of the EI Emotional Intelligence Center at Yale, and Mark Brackett runs it now, but David was the founder and stuff. So we're going to go over that right now. So this is wonderful. You've set me up beautifully, Joanna. Thank you. So let's go a little deeper to learn more about what emotional intelligence is, based on the hard skills of emotional intelligence. So let me give you the background in case you don't know it. So Peter Salovey and John Mayer, it's Jack Mayer, but John Mayer, he goes by Jack. They were the first ones to define emotional intelligence in a scholarly paper that they wrote when they were postdoctoral students at Yale University. Along with David Caruso, developed in 2002 an EI test that we're going to talk about in a little bit. So Daniel Goleman if you read his first book, you'll notice that he based his work, his EQ model, on their work, but then he expanded the definition to include self-awareness, positivity, social skills, personality traits, and more. So from his work, a lot of EQ tests popped up. Emotional Intelligence 2.0, EQI 360. So they were hugely popular. He, in the beginning, said that emotional intelligence is even more important than your IQ, which he's walked that back quite a bit, because that's not true. It's just your IQ is what gets you in the door. It's your EQ or EI that really brings you to the top, brings you success. So the EQ tests, the ones that Daniel Goleman is the head, the one that founded that, they're called self-report tests, meaning that they measure what the test taker thinks of themselves. It's a self-report. So what the EI test does is it actually tests 4 core abilities of emotional intelligence, which we'll go into, and the 8 subtasks. So what happens is that the test taker's answers are compared to the correct answers as determined by 21 emotion researchers and experts throughout the world. So what happens is a lot of people will overestimate their emotional intelligence, and they're often surprised when they get their EI results because they're a lot different. And so let me explain why people get surprised and why they may overestimate. So we've all been to, hopefully, a basketball game. So when I say that emotional intelligence is an ability, it can be measured. And here's an example. So the player on the free throw line, they say, okay, I think I'm going to make this basket. So that's considered a self-report. They're like, I think I'm going to make that basket. Now, his teammates and the coach sitting on the bench, they also will make an assessment and go, yeah, I think he's going to make that basket. That's considered a 360. He's getting input from other people. But what really matters is, does he sink the basket? And that's considered an ability. It's a performance-based model. So it doesn't matter what he thinks. It doesn't matter what other people think. It matters whether he's going to make the basket. That's what the EI test, the Mesquite it's called, is going to measure. Because remember, there are more right answers. It's an objective test. It's not a subjective test. There are right and less right answers. Any questions about that whole concept? It makes sense, I hope, to people that it's an ability. Okay, so the Mesquite gets its name, just to let you know, from Mayer, M, Salovey, Caruso, Emotional Intelligence Test. We pronounce it the Mesquite. So as I said, it was developed in 2002, and it's the most used EI instrument for scholarly research. That's why when I did my master's, I used the Mesquite, because I did my paper on the need for emotional intelligence in the Department of Homeland Security. So you can imagine how fun that paper was. So for those of you who are into psychometrics, any psychometrics fans? Woo! But you know, when we're giving a test, we should know, is it reliable and is it valid? So that's again why I chose the Mesquite, because with psychometrics, it has to test the reliability, meaning that the test is consistent and stable in measuring over time, and that it's reliable. So the good news is that the Mesquite has an internal consistency of 0.9. Excellent is 0.8 and greater. So that therefore you can reassure your test takers that the questions that they're responding to are actually related to one another and are a true measurement of emotional intelligence. It's a valid instrument. And I think it's important when we're talking about a test, we need to know, is it valid and reliable? So let's go back to why people should become emotionally intelligent. So again, I'm basing this on research. There have been hundreds, if not thousands, of research studies done about the Mesquite, using the Mesquite and going in and assessing people's team performance, their individual performance. And these are some of the results. What we notice is that people and teams that are high in emotional intelligence engage in more pro-social behavior, have better quality relationships, higher levels of trust. They can handle stress better, more sensitivity and empathy, creating that great work environment, and they're better at handling conflict. So if these are pretty, yes, they're bold statements, but it is true that if we develop and practice emotional intelligence, we will hopefully experience these if we choose to practice. So let's begin to learn the model. This is going to be the easiest thing you've ever learned, okay? We're talking 4 abilities. However, David and I have seen very few people that can execute this in real time under stress. Because you know what happens when we're under stress? We don't always act the way we would like to. So what we do is we have 4 abilities, and David and I decided to use an alliteration, because what Jack and Peter did when they defined the 4 abilities, they said perceive and facilitate and understand and manage. And we said, let's make it fun and easy to remember. So we call it map, match, meaning, move. Really simple. But together, what they do is they form this blueprint for emotions, so that when we get good at this, we can actually prepare for difficult situations or help us go through difficult situations using this model. So let's go a little deeper. All right. So if you'll recall, at the beginning of the workshop, I asked you how you were feeling. And I appreciate and I asked you specifically to give me emotion words. Now, how do we typically find out how people are feeling? We usually say, hey, how are you? So if I were to have asked you that question, what would you have said? Just curious in chat. What do you typically say?
I'm good. I'm fine.
You're fine. You're good. Some people go, great. And you're like, really? We're behind on a project. How can you be, what's going on? But that's what we get. So what happens is that how are you has become meaningless. It's a social construct. It's a nicety that we don't really even care about the answer, except if you're coaches, of course, right? So what we do is we need to learn how to map. And here's where that mood meter comes in. So what we know is that our emotion can be tracked on two axes, how much energy we have and how pleasant we are. Remember that emotions are data, and they should be considered in every important decision that we have to make. There are no good or bad emotion, no negative or positive emotion, because all emotions can serve a purpose. And there are universal causes of emotion. I mean, let's think about happiness. We know that somebody has gained something of value. Sadness, you lose something of value. Surprise, something unexpected happened. Disgust, rules are violated. Fear, there's a possible threat. But my favorite of all times, my breakthrough moment as a coach was anger, the universal cause. Because if we really think about it and we stop thinking it's about us and we get curious, the definition, the universal cause of anger is someone is being blocked from something they care very deeply about or a dream unrealized. And when I started to recognize that, it really allowed me to go deeper with my clients and even with myself. So emotions can be mapped. I want to map yours now. So what I'd like you to do is look at the energy and give yourself a number, and then give yourself a number on the feeling axis. And I'd like in chat, if you would please put what quadrant you're in. Are you in the green, the blue, the red, the yellow? And I'll use this as we go into the next part. So where are you? Green? Okay, and true, some yellow, some green. You may vacillate through all of them. I've had people say we're in the middle, which I love when you're in the middle. And actually, when people are in the blue area, I think that's good too. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Thank you. So I'd like to invite you right now to just unmute yourself. So if emotions are data, do you check in with yourself before you do a coaching call to know what emotion you're feeling? How many of you do? And to further that question, how do you know how other people are feeling? What do you do?
I ask them.
You ask them, and do you get an authentic answer?
Well, usually what I'll do, especially in coaching, is I will observe, here's what I see, what's going on for you, or something to that effect. So especially in coaching, it doesn't really serve them to not be authentic. Now, if I'm walking down the street, I'm not going to do that.
Right. Because we have no skin in the game. And a lot of times in coaching, people are there because they are struggling with their emotion, aren't they? They can't articulate their emotion. So we can help them. We can help them by the mood meter, and just looking at what we just shared without words on it. Like, tell me your energy. Tell me your pleasantness. Oh, well, and then we'll go into the next part of it. But oh, that quadrant, here's some emotion words. What do you think feels right for you? And then if there's a disconnect, you can actually call them on that, right? Like, yeah, you say you're happy, but I'm seeing sadness or I'm sensing sadness. Is there more going on? Okay. So yeah, and some people don't feel comfortable saying, I feel anxious with a touch of sadness, but you can ask them on the mood map where they are. You can also, I use hey, from 0 to 10, where 0, you hate that idea, to 10, you love this idea, where are you on that scale? So now it's a thinking game and not a feeling game. So how else do you know how people are feeling? I'm just curious. Or do you check in with yourself before you even start a coaching? They say, we need to be present and we need to ground ourselves. But honestly, do you check in with yourself?
Probably not as consistently as I should. Certainly an important best practice for me as a coach. And sometimes I found when I check in, things come up that I wasn't necessarily sensing until I paused, to check in first. So certainly an important practice, and something that can help a session go much better and can make me aware of things that I might be bringing in and as a result taking on, from my client if I'm not aware.
Yeah, we know we should do it, but do we do it? And is it just like, how are you? Fine. Like, like taking those 5 minutes beforehand, getting the glass of water, looking out the window, like I have a window in front of me, taking a few deep breaths. And we're going to talk about a management strategy is preparing for what could happen. Like if you're dealing with a client that is experiencing emotional issues, like really intense, be prepared, So yeah.
And Lisa, I just wanted to point out a comment that Joanna made when you were talking about using the quadrants or the mood map. She says, blue seems so much safer than words that may have judgments attached or around them.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to be really careful about judging because remember I said to stay curious because sometimes what they might say or how they might be acting may not actually be their emotion. So that's why it's really important to go deeper and especially if they want to go deeper. So we're going to go. So the first part of emotional intelligence is mapping our emotion and the people that we're dealing with. How am I feeling? How are they feeling? And am I sure that that's what I'm dealing with? Because emotions are data. Okay, so now we're going to go to the second part of emotional intelligence, the second M. And it goes and talks about a little bit about the blue, how you felt safer there. And there's a reason. So what I just did was I took the mood map and I put what typical emotion words come out of those areas. And again, there's no good or bad, but what we have to ask ourselves is, are the emotions we're feeling helpful to the situation? So if we know there are no good and bad, then there are chances that, yeah, is anger ever necessary? Yeah. I mean, think about it in business. Think about it when you want to make a life change. You're like, honestly, I went back and got my master's degree because I was told that I needed more, like I didn't get a job because of my lack of education. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go back to school. And I'm not only going to get a bachelor's, get a master's. So there, so yeah, it can be really helpful. So what I say to remember this ability, match the emotion to the task at hand. What is it you want to get out? What's your goal? What's helpful? So if I'm feeling content, it's really great for consensus building, self-reflection, collaboration. We're feeling mellow, but we're not, but we're pleasant. Happiness and joy. I mean, we've all been there when we're trying to inspire people and get them feeling, creative and generate that enthusiasm and positivity. It's powerful. You're open to possibilities, but it can also be distracting when you need people to settle down, to focus on what's wrong. So the anxiety piece is also, we need anxiety, but we have to be careful. It's the most difficult area to manage. So I want to caution you on if you think that anger, anxiety, worry, stress, if it's helpful, make sure you're taking care of yourself and others, because we know that this is where communication breaks down. We say things and do things we regret. We don't listen. We make decisions that probably aren't in the best interest of people or ourselves. And so we need to dip into there cautiously. Sadness, that area is also boredom and feeling a little, like a little low pleasantness, but it can be really good when you're trying to find errors, when you're trying to, they studies show that people in that quadrant can actually pick up on errors very quickly. What could go wrong? And it can also be a place where we show deep empathy for people. This is where we show this ability is where we show emotional empathy. And because there is a difference between cognitive empathy and emotional empathy. Emotional empathy, we feel in our bodies what others feel. But cognitive empathy is we don't feel it here, but we feel it here. And we know if somebody's pet passed away, how that might feel. And we might say, I'm so sorry. We know what to say. But this is about emotional empathy. So the things we have to remember is that our emotions are contagious. There's such a thing as emotional contagion. You infect people and we know this. So when you come into a coaching session, right, you might match their emotion. They're upset and you might be more tranquil. They're excited. You might get excited with them. So what we need to do is figure out, is this emotion helpful to the situation? If it is, great. But if it isn't, how do we shift to meet our goals? So it's called matching our emotion to the task at hand. So I'm just curious, have you ever been in a situation where you had realized that there was a mismatch, meaning the goal and the emotion weren't matched very well? Or maybe it was and it worked out really well. Have you ever paid attention to that? Whether in coaching or in life?
I don't know that I've ever paid attention to it like that, but I find it fascinating that when you're in a sadder state because you're focusing on negative feelings, your cognitive goes negative with it, and you're able to find those errors, like you were saying.
Mm.
And I wonder if the inverse is true as well, where you're feeling happiness and excitement. You're going to focus on more positive things, and so you're going to see those. So it makes sense. It's just not something I ever thought of. I get matching emotions to task at hand, but it's kind of neat that there's some real science behind it.
Yeah, because the definition of emotional intelligence is that emotions impact our behaviors and how we think. And so it's really, it does. I mean, think about your capacity to think clearly when you're feeling fear or anger. But when you're feeling joy, you're open to possibilities, but you may miss errors. You may miss somebody saying, I don't think you should do that. Oh,
Right.
sure, let's go. Yeah,
Exactly.
you got to reel it in. So, yeah. Eric, did you have a question?
No, I just wanted to sort of piggyback on that. I mean, I do a lot of now lately, I've been working with a lot of people who are doing career transitions, right? Which is sort of, I've been fired or I need to find a new job because my current job sucks, stinks. Maybe that's a better word. Sorry to be judgy about their jobs. And often there's a mismatch between the emotions needed to take that task on because they're feeling very dejected or low and down and bummed out. And it's all very natural. And it's very discouraging. I mean, God, who doesn't think LinkedIn is like the most depressing place in the world, right? Anyway, but it's hard because, they would be much better suited to approach that task with enthusiasm and joy and the sort of the wonder of of the unknown and what may wait ahead for them. So just sharing that.
No, I appreciate that because, yeah, I mean, I think it's probably all happened to most of us. I know it happened to me where I was told to move on. And I was demoted. I was kept my grade, But instead of being in charge of 42 people, they put me in charge of the FAQ and the knowledge library. And I'm a people person. Just shoot me now. Like, just really, like, that was a knife through my heart. And yeah, I had to go through the pain, the anger, the frustration. But you know what it did? It propelled me into my quest to become a leadership coach. And here I am, happy, happy. So yeah, but you have to, and you know, Eric, you make a great point. We need to, a strategy to manage other people's emotion. First of all, empathy, but then to meet them where they are and to let them vent and to hear them and to say, yeah, I validate that. That's a strategy to help them manage their emotion. Absolutely. Do we want to keep them there for session after session? They need to eventually start to move into the, at least the green, to feel hopeful and then maybe excited, you know, but it's a craft. It takes a lot of work. So thank you. Yeah. So
Thank you for that.
matching our emotion to the
Yeah, Lisa,
tasking.
before we move on, there was a comment in here from Fiorella. She says, if I'm trying to match too hard, I become focused on the task and deflect my attention as opposed to perhaps attuning to my client's emotions.
Yeah. So what I welcome you to do is observe their emotion. Just observe it. But we all know, like what Eric was saying, if you have a client that over and over is beating themselves up, feeling dejected, how long do we keep them there? You know, how long do we allow them? So that's all that match is. It's like, is this emotion helpful to me and my client? So it is actually, I will share with you that this ability is the least substantive ability, meaning when we look at the psychometrics around it, it's very difficult because we also measure empathy, sensations as part of our test. So, and this is the hardest one for people to grasp. So don't worry about it. If it, you know, don't focus on it. Just know that, is it helpful? Is it helpful? Yeah. Alexander.
And Lisa, I'm going to ask a question. In everyday life, I don't pay too much attention to my emotion. But in session, I usually say to my client, listen, we have built some system that consists of us both. And what if you hide your emotions now? But I'm feeling this way. How can you explain this? That's my questions to my client. And I propose him or her to explain it, to explain my emotions.
Yeah. Well, that is also emotional intelligence. And that's the third ability we're about to get to. It's because it's all well and good to help a client say, this is what I'm feeling, and to even realize that it might not be helpful, but there's the cognitive piece of emotional intelligence that's important. Getting to that why, you know, what understanding why we feel the way we do, articulating it, and then finally managing it. So you're leading them down the right path. It's like explain. So now we're moving from here to explain it. Let's think about it. Let's talk about it, you know? And that's kind of helpful. The emotional intelligence blueprint, I call it a container. You know, I'm sure you've heard of this in models, a container for these intense problems and emotions. What it does is it allows us to safely explore our emotion, call it for what it is, to really, but then to go into that cognitive prefrontal cortex of, we got to make meaning of this because we'll never have a breakthrough if we don't get to the root cause. So you're on the right track for sure. Yeah. Who had their hand up? Somebody had their hand up. I can't remember. I saw a brief flash. Maybe not.
I think it was Sherry, but I think she was trying to reconnect.
Okay. All right. So what we just did were the two abilities. Pretty simple, right? Simple. Map match. Okay, we're half done. That's the experiential part of emotional intelligence. Now we're moving into the part where really, when I teach the technical people, the police officers, the military, the government executives, the scientists, the academics, they're the ones who go, yeah, now we're going into strategic. I'm all in, because that's the thinking part of emotional intelligence. So let's go a little deeper. All right. So we just did the experiential feeling emotion. And now we're going to go to the cognitive, make meaning of it. And notice it's blank because I just love this. Ready? Here we go. Oh, it doesn't do it on this one. Oh, when I do it in a different application, it unfurls itself. It's so pretty. But anyhow, so now we're moving into making meaning of it. This is probably the ability that people want to skip the most. Yes, they want to skip like how they feel, but you know that this is where the work happens. It's why do we feel the way we do? And you need to take time to do that. So in order to solve these complex challenges, we can actually do something called emotional affective forecasting. Just like you can almost predict the rain, like the rain's coming and then it's turning cold. I predict it's going to snow. I'm in the Vermont. It's going to snow 1 to 3 inches tonight. You people in Southern Florida. So I know, lucky you guys. So what we do is I love to use the Plutchik's wheel. And I have, I'll talk a little bit about workbooks I have that show all these emotion words, but I love this picture. And what it is a circumplex. So the intense emotion is in the inside where it says rage, loathing, grief, and it folds down into this beautiful circumplex. But it's a nice visualization of 8 families of emotion. And what I do is I show people that emotions progress from mild to more intense. So let's start with the one we all know really well, annoyance. Can turn into anger, can turn into rage. I see this a lot at work. Boredom turns into disgust, turns into loathing. Or somebody's worried about something, apprehensive, can turn into fear, can turn into terror. So we need to be our vocabulary, emotional vocabulary. When you're emotionally intelligent, you broaden your vocabulary. Instead of saying, I'm mad, you might say, yeah, I'm kind of annoyed, because that's a lot different than when we're mad. Or I love this. Well, do you love it? Or are you just maybe mildly happy or anticipation or whatever? So this helps the client or myself to just learn these emotion words. And in our workbook, we have hundreds of them, and it tells you what family they're in. But we also know that emotions blend to form more complex emotion. So some of my favorites, surprise and fear, blend awe. Or joy and trust become love. And the one that I see at the workplace, disgust and anger, can turn into contempt. So what we need to do is we need to get prepared for how emotions progress and what could happen. So I don't know if you see this in meetings, but we go in, we have an agenda, and all of a sudden it goes off the rails. Somebody gets upset, somebody cries, somebody yells. Because what happened was we didn't tap in to people's emotions. We didn't know where they were. And then all of a sudden they show up in anger or rage. We weren't paying attention. We didn't check in. So what we need to understand is the people we're dealing with. Like we see people all the time. We don't know what's going on in their lives. But let's talk just about your family and your friends and your clients. So I'm curious, do you know, and I'm going to ask you, this is a question, do you know what the people that you rely on, the people that you care about, what makes them tick? Meaning, what makes them angry or proud or sad or frustrated? Or better yet, do you know their values? Because we know that that's like our moral compass. That's what guides our decisions. So I'm curious, how well do you know people and really understand who they are? Think of a few key people. Think of an important client. Think of, if you're still working, a boss or somebody that you really need. It could be a colleague that you need their help with. How well do you know them?
I have to admit, I'm kind of a dope. I don't, I don't know the values and the, how well I really know people. Some I do, but for the most part, like I could do better there.
And the reverse question is, do they know anything about you? Because I have this happen when I go into workspace and talk to bosses, supervisors, and their employees. I say to the supervisor, do you know your staff? And they're like, absolutely. Oh yeah, I know why John, it gets angry and why, Lisa is bored at times. And I say, well, do they know that about you, about what makes you tick? And they're like, well, why should they? I'm like, well, because then you're like role modeling, like getting to know people and establishing relationships and trust. Claudia.
I wanted to share that every time I get a new client, I give them a values assessment so that I know,
Nice.
what's their essence. And I try to share a little bit about mine so that,
Yeah.
we're like on the same page.
Super.
And it makes it super easy for me. Well, not gonna say easy, but I know the kind of person they are, and for me,
Yeah.
that's super amazing to know that.
Yeah. I'm sure it helps you in your coaching as well,
Sure.
because what those
Yes.
core and it doesn't have to be complex. I mean, I have a handout that I give that show values and we do a values exercise. It's not,
Mhm.
but it's so important because then you
Right.
know how they base their decisions, what they feel about certain things. So very
And
nice.
actually, they love doing it because it's most of the time it's like their first time, and they get to know themselves better. So that's pretty neat. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can help them live a more aligned, purposeful life when they are in aligned with their values.
Right.
And
That's the whole
that's the whole
purpose
point.
of doing it. Yes. Yeah. Right.
Beautiful, Claudia. We should do a whole workshop on values, right?
Yeah, we should.
Joanna. Yeah. Joanna, what do you have to share?
I was just thinking that, what a great team building exercise that would be for just to hand out the Plutchik wheel and, go to somebody in the room and ask them for what makes them feel 3 of these feelings. Let them pick the feelings they want to talk about. And I mean, that would be wild just to see people get to know each other better, because a lot of team building stuff really is not, sitting around drumming together does not help people understand each other. It's nice, but it doesn't help people understand.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of activities that you can do to bring that out. And that's a perfect, doing a values exercise, bringing out the Plutchik wheel. I do one where I say, choose a task you do as a team every week or, together. How do you feel about it? How do you want to feel about it? And why do you feel this way? And we did one yesterday about the dreaded weekly meeting. And it was fantastic because honesty really came out. And some people were like not engaged. They couldn't stand them. And so they as a team, they decided what to do to move them into that creative space because they all wanted to feel supportive and useful. And so that was super helpful exercise. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, Alexander.
Yes, Lisa, I've taken some rules for myself, and I look at every person in my life as a unique universe. So I do not know how does the person feel something, how the person takes any decision. So, and from this situation, when I simply ask a person, what I can get depends on how sincere the person.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. If they don't trust you, you could ask them till the cows come home. We say that in Vermont. Um, and, and nothing will, they won't. And so there's a perfect example. If I have a boss who doesn't ask about me, I view that they don't care about me. And if they don't care about me, I don't care about them. You know, you didn't care to know, and you're not giving me any information. So this is where trust is very important. And the way we build that trust is by really being authentic and saying, I really do want to know what you value. What kind of boss do you like? What kind of colleague do you like? You know, like what bothers you so we can work together better. And I don't, because remember I said about disgust? It means that values or rules were violated. If I don't know that you value family and I prevent you from doing family activities like going to your kids' soccer matches by giving you work at the end of the day or disapproving leave or whatever, I've violated something really important and didn't even know it, but I'm going to pay for it. So, yes, you bring up a great point. Trust is so important, and we can build trust by getting to know other people and being authentic. So, thank you. All right. So, now we have perceived people's emotion, we've mapped them, we ask ourselves, have we shown empathy, have we connected, do we know if we're in good places, do we understand why we feel the way we do, what's the root cause, because people like to just fix problems, they like to bypass the root cause, because every emotion has a root cause. So there's a difference between mood and emotion. And we get sloppy. Even David and I get sloppy between calling a mood and emotion the same thing, and they're not. An emotion is like a signal. It means something happened. And we know emotion can come on so quickly before our brains catch up to it. That's from our reptilian brain, the amygdala hijack, you know, that fight, flight, freeze. It's a protection. And by the time our brain figures it out, we could make wrong decisions. So we really do need to take that moment to go deeper to say, you know, is that a rock hurtling at me or is that a balloon? You know, like we need to fire up our prefrontal cortex. So it's important for us to understand the root cause. So all emotions have a root cause. Moods, you can't really figure out. Like, have you ever woke up on the wrong side of the bed? You know, or, you know, like, and it just the day goes bad, you trip, you know, you get an offender bender, the copier jams, whatever, you know, you just feel like, that's a mood. So I say, manage it, just manage it. Don't infect people because you're just nasty right now. So just do whatever you need to do. But if it's an emotion, and yes, there are times, and we're going to get into managing and moving our emotion. There are times when showing your authentic emotion is not appropriate. We know that. If you're in a coaching call, before a coaching call, and you're not feeling it, it's our job to get into the right emotional state. Unless we truly can't, then we should cancel and be honest about it, you know, but true, sometimes we have to show up. But what happens is that when we suppress our emotion, research has shown this, that it'll eventually come out in very unhealthy ways. And it usually can be physically. We're not sleeping, we get disease, whatever. So that's why it's so important to do this last piece, which is the movement of emotion. Meaning, if you are in a good place, then stay where you are. But if you aren't in a good place, how do we move it? This is where people are judged. I mean, by their actions, right? By their actions, their behaviors. And so, therefore, we need to learn how to move and sustain these emotions to say, what is helpful? And if it is anxiety, what am I going to do to manage that? Because it's stressful. So we don't want to say things we regret because trust can be broken, as you know, so easily. So we all know our the long-term ones that we should be doing, right? Getting at least 7 hours of sleep, eating a healthy diet, exercising moderately almost every day, seeking social support, some kind of spirituality, meditation, relaxation. But are we doing them? And as coaches, we need to role model that. We need to have healthy practices because we know that if we're not healthy, we can't help others. So, are you taking care of yourselves? What are you doing to make sure that you're at your best? There are so many strategies for managing people's emotions, yourselves, and others. There's a litany of them. We have many in our book that we list, but it's what works for you. Because what works for me might not work for you. So I'm wondering, how do you manage your stress? And I'm asking this question: how do you manage your stress? What do you do when you know you're triggered? When you know that you don't want to go to that meeting or you're not at your best? What do you do? What are your strategies? Eric, what are your strategies?
Try to sort of, break the chain between the emotion and the action, right? And
Okay.
breathe, right? Breathe.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah. Adriana says, breathe and be present. Yeah. Breathing. I just came back from 6 days at Kripalu. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's in the West Berkshires in Massachusetts. It was magical. I disconnected from all technology for 6 days, nothing. And it was so what I needed because I knew I was getting burnt out. I was getting crabby. I'm a very positive person. I was negative. I was feeling awful. So I recognized that, boy, you got to do something extreme. And I realized how important breathing is. So important. Yeah. Claudia, what do you do?
So when I'm really stressed or not in a good place, I journal. I
Yeah,
write.
wonderful.
And I go to
Lovely.
the gym every single day. I try not to miss.
Yes.
I rest Saturday and Sundays, and some days,
Yeah.
Sundays, I would go to the gym.
Yeah.
And that keeps
Wonderful.
me healthy and
Mhm.
tired at night. So I try to sleep 7 to 8 hours.
Good for you. Good. I
Yes.
try to. Sometimes easier said than done. And with daylight savings, man, I'm still on the other time zone. I can't. I'm like, boing, I'm up. Yeah, it'll get better. So yeah. Thank you, Carol, for walking. I think getting outdoors are just so important. Just take that break, Anastasia, breathing, exercising, get fresh air. Yeah. Joanna, how about for you?
So my house flooded in an event, a weather event in April. And then I
Hmm.
had what was left, like 20 cubic yards of my belongings went in a dumpster. And I
Oh,
lost my flooring. And anyway, big deal. And then I had things safely stored in the garage, and we had another flood in the garage, but not the
oh
house.
no. Oh no.
And then I got fired in September. So how do I deal with stress from a job I
Oh
did?
my goodness. I'm feeling stressed for you, Joanna. Oh my gosh. Wow. Oh no. So what
I had
did you
that job for
do?
7 years. So it literally is I already walk with my dogs like a couple times a day. So I do, 1.5 miles, 2 miles every day with my dogs. I garden. And I like I never really got the whole mantra thing until this happened. And having to I had to stay in my house while it's being repaired. It's still not done. I still don't have a kitchen. Um, so so I
Wow.
got flooring last couple of weeks. But
Small progress, right? And you're smiling and you're laughing, which sometimes humor
right.
can really
So
help
yeah, so
because it's
really,
like,
really
what's gonna happen? What's next? It's like, geez.
Yeah,
Wow,
my
Joanne.
bed has been in almost every room of my house just because, as things are being, and now my mantra is, yeah, this is temporary. Oh, Carol, believe me, I have 15 years I have been a coach and I have never not had a coach. And
Yeah,
usually I have a coach and a therapist. I mean,
that's
seriously,
great.
that is like, oh, absolutely top of the list. But getting enough sleep, gardening, like now I'm going to events like the theater. It's like I found that because isolation during COVID, so getting out and being socially active, connecting with more people, these are things that, even though I'm really an introvert, and you cannot tell when I do stuff like this, um, but being around people tends to drain me. But I find that reconnecting with humans is also, that emotional contagion, like going to a theater event, enjoying that for me, because everyone in, like everyone in this program is open and receptive. And so being around energy that is good for me.
Yeah, so important. So important. So take care of yourself, Joanna. And
Oh yeah.
wow, I'm sorry to hear all this, but I'm glad that you're finding the help and support and
And
getting
finding
through
the
it.
good in it, because I didn't have the
Yeah.
money to remodel my house. So thank you, universe, for flooding my house and giving me a full remodel on the insurance company.
Yay. Okay. See, there's a little silver lining there. There we go.
And I was
I like
miserable
that.
where I was working. So this is the universe going, here, honey, go someplace else. Do
It's
something else.
true. I mean, and it is our mindset, that growth mindset we talk about, and not letting it defeat us and staying positive in the throes of diversity and adversity. Adversity, it's really difficult, so congratulations. Yeah, gratitude is a huge strategy too, right? Gratitude. So there's a lot. And there's also strategies of managing other people, helping them with their emotion. And a lot of times people say, well, I can't manage other people's emotion. That's on them. And I'm like, well, no, you actually can help, by coaching, listening to them, seeing their point of view, giving them space, validating how they're feeling. I mean, there's lots of things that we can do for sure. So yeah, I like the idea about a retreat. I think you guys should all go on a retreat. I love that idea together because, like you said, you're like-minded people coming together. They get this work. And that's what was so great about Kripalu, because everybody was there who were really into self-improvement and health and things like that. So really important. Okay, so we're getting, 20 minutes out and I want to make sure we get through. So let's move on back to the blueprint. So even though I showed you earlier this circular round thing, and yes, we go from map to match to meaning to move, but it doesn't always go in that perfect trajectory. You might start in one area and go right to a thinking piece, but then go circle back. But what I do is I sometimes will hand this out and say, all right, what is your challenge right now? But then I have them switch to that positive. I know if any of you are into appreciative inquiry, I'm certified in AI, not the artificial intelligence, but appreciative inquiry. And it's about, reframing and looking at outcomes in a positive way. So what it does is it actually shifts people from their problem to what they really want to achieve. But then this is a safe container for them to put their emotions, to journal. I have a PDF document of this, and it's like, so they can actually say, like, what are you and others feeling? Are those helpful to the situation? What is causing these emotions? And what strategies am I going to use? And that's where a coach can really help as well. So it's a framework that I've used before I have a difficult conversation. And because if things are going really well, like I'm going to tell my direct report that they got promoted, do I need to prepare for that? No. It's happy. Do I need to prepare going to a baby shower? No. But if it's something like I need to give critical feedback, this client is stuck and I need to give them the honest truth here and what I'm seeing. So it allows you to just write it out. And that, meaning part is like, I call that the emotional what if. If I say this, what might they say? How might they feel? And if they say that, what will I do? Because I've done this before I go into a really intense conversation. I've also done it after a really bad conversation. Like I blew it. It went off the rails. And so what I do is I kind of write down like what was going on, and I actually write down like what happened during. Like maybe all of a sudden I was triggered and I started to feel angry. And why did I feel angry? Because they challenged me, and how dare they? Like so all of a sudden all my crap comes out, and I'm like, whoa, okay. So what it does is it allows me to say, what will I do differently next time? Or how can I get better at this in practice? The biggest thing we can do, I find that when we make a mistake, and I'm sure you all realize this, is a heartfelt apology. I'm really sorry. I screwed up. It goes a long way when you mean it, for sure. So again, the ability model of emotional intelligence, the applications that it has. So when I got back from being certified, I was certified in how to give people their feedback. And I didn't do it right off because it is I'll send you what the instrument looks like. It's actually being revised and bringing it into the current modern age. And it's really a cool test. It's going to hopefully come out next year. But I can send you what the current one is, and you'll see I have it actually. I'll show you real quick. But even though I didn't give a lot of assessments, because remember I was in the government space and it costs money to do these, they're about $60, $65 each to run the test. But then of course you add your fee on to that. So you decide because what you do is you have to analyze the data, and then you have to give an hour feedback session. And the reason why it's a 2-day course is because not only do you have to learn what emotional intelligence is, you have to learn how your results, you have to take the test. And then you have to learn how your results are going to impact your ability to give results to others, because it's going to show up. And then to practice giving feedback, because remember I said that most people overestimate and they want straight A's. And if you're going to say you need to develop, you have to really talk in the right language. You use hypotheses. So I just want you to briefly read, like quickly look at this list over. And what I did is I took the ability model and I created training and leadership development. And anybody who wanted to hear about it, I gave in government space free seminars, free learn about EI. And then I went out to the Naval School and I taught a course for FEMA and for the Homeland Security Executive Leadership Program. And then I started branching out with my business. And yesterday I did a 2.5-hour session. Next week, I'm doing another session for, believe it or not, hairstylists, a salon. So whatever, it doesn't matter if I'm at the DC Metropolitan Police Leadership Academy, or if I'm at Stephen and Burns Hair Salon in my hometown. You can take these skills and adapt it to anything. So a game changer for me was learning these skills and getting certified. So these are all hyperlinked. So when you get it, you can actually click on what the Mesquite is. There's a flyer. There's some books. There's some videos. We do a newsletter. We do monthly newsletters. We do, and in that newsletter, I write a column about developing EI skills. And once you subscribe, there's archives from February. So you can see how I use what I've learned in day to day, whether I'm dealing with high school kids, whether I'm dealing with anybody. I went to the the Coast Guard Academy, and I spoke to them about EI. So there's a LinkedIn group, and you can stay connected with me, even though LinkedIn, I know some people don't care for it, but I love to stay connected. David and I did develop 3 books. This is an hour read. It's called The Leader's Guide to Solving Challenges with Emotional Intelligence. It'll take you an hour, and in the back are about 28 blueprints, common things that leaders face. We have a workbook that I use in all my courses. So we're doing a skill building course that you will tell you about hopefully early next year. But you can use this. I've had people read the book, read the workbook, and actually use it in their practice. And then we did the Educator's Practical Guide to Emotional Intelligence, and I'm working on a emotional intelligence for teenagers. All these are hyperlinked, or you can cut and paste. David Caruso did all these videos. So if you want to go a little deeper on how are you matching emotion, reading people, cause of emotion, all of that you can do. I'm going to quickly share with you. Let me see if I can find it. I thought I had the mosquito. I don't. I'll share it after. I'm going to send also. So you're going to have these slides. So you'll have them. You're also going to, I'll send you the mood map, not the mood meter, because we made the mood map. I'll send you copies of those. And so you can see what the mesquite looks like. So you can read it, and we are revamping it. So before we go, we have time for questions. And also, I always ask these questions of people that I give this presentation to. Closing reflections. Any aha moments, anything that maybe you learned today, or an intriguing idea before we go?
So one of the first things you said that before we even got into this was you used the acronym Q-tip, and that just set me, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to use that one.
Good. You can steal anything I tell you.
But no, I have to, I'm going to be doing a presentation. So, working some of this into it is going to be very helpful. Thank you. This was very informative. Very good use of my time today. Thank you.
I'm glad. I would love for every one of you to be certified, because I can tell you there are thousands and thousands of people certified in EQ and not as many in the hard skill of EI. And so a lot of people are going around thinking that they're super emotionally intelligent. And I'm not saying they aren't, but it's more closely related to their personality and social aspects. And also, it's a self-report, it's how they see themselves. So that's why when they get assessed in the mesquite, they're like, whoa. And what it does is it illuminates areas that maybe they never considered. So we are offering 3 certification classes next year. And anybody from ICF, we will give a $300 discount too. So you can just say I'm an ICF coach, because we deserve discounts. So I really, and you can take this. I don't know how many of you do this for a living, but you can step out of just coaching space. How many of you deliver workshops or do consulting? I have built my business on this model, and it is just exploding. And because there are so few people that do what I do, I want more of us. I want to spread the word throughout ICF. And it's been crowded, honestly, with EQ, which, again, like I said, nothing wrong with it, but we need to get the word out that there's the hard skills of EI, and that it's a great instrument with 0.9 reliability and validity. That's pretty cool. No instrument can say that. So thank you, Carol. What else that you have learned or taken away? We have a few more minutes, or questions. Any questions? Because I always like like push back, or that didn't make sense, or yeah, Eric.
So what are next steps then? Buy the book, grab the book. That's the next. I mean,
well, I would say, I'm not here to promote my book.
Of
But
course.
I think that you may see this as an opportunity to go deeper in your own practice, especially with the exercises. I keep it up there, and I use this. When I went to the weather service, there were 40 meteorologists, and I handed them each a workbook. And we actually did the 4 abilities using their work scenarios. So you could teach from it immediately. But what I hope you do is, if you want to take this further, is to get certified, because then you're going to really learn it. And more importantly, you already learned it, but how do you give feedback to somebody? Because that's where you can really help your clients to go deeper and to say, oh, interesting. Let's say empathy was low. It's a hypothesis, but you could ask a question. How do you show empathy? Or if they miss emotional cues, how do you read a room if they're really low? So there's a lot that can be developed. But I've had people not take the class, not take the course, not get certified, grab the book, grab the workbook, and they were off and running. They just developed courses. That's what I did. I took David's certification in 2010. I wrote my dissertation in 2011. And then I went on the road. I developed LTR leadership, put my shingle out, and I went on the road learning, because I knew the skills so well. And then eventually I started to give assessments. And now I've given probably 300 under my belt. And it's a really cool instrument. It is so cool, but it's
So since you brought
complex.
it up,
It's not easy.
well, since you brought it up, what's certification look like?
Yeah. So there's a
Is that
video, and it's one of the resources on the handout. So you click on it and you'll see what to expect. And you could see an example. So if you get certified, let's say in January, in the Mesquite, where the Mesquite 2 is coming out, you're still going to be certified to administer the new version. And we'll have like tutorials, and we'll talk about the differences, but you'll still have that basic 4 abilities and know the tasks. Because we didn't get into the tasks. We got into the 4 abilities, but there's 8 tasks. There's a positive negative bias. There's a scatter score. There's area scores. There's all kinds of, and it's all based on a bell curve. So it's a really fascinating instrument, but it's complex. And so that's why a lot of people shy away from it, because it's not easy to really do a great job. But we give you so many resources that you'll never go off and do something bad, because we have scripts, and once you get your own voice, it's pretty easy to, well, easy. I shouldn't never say that, because it takes skill. That's why we take it very seriously, because we don't want to do damage to people. So yeah. So if you have any follow-up questions, please reach out to me, lisa@ltrleadership.com. It's all in the PowerPoint slides. I will send Jimmy, I'll send you and Eileen the maps and the Mesquite sample so people can see it. But I really thank you for your time. If you have any other follow-ups, please let us know.
Oh, this was really, really good. I do want to remind everybody, please click the link so you can take the survey afterwards. We always like to share feedback with our wonderful speakers. So thank you, Lisa, for bringing some emotional intelligence to us down here. I think a lot of us, we all know, and I was going to ask, but we're running out of time. Like if I were going to present a workshop to an organization and say, they're going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, we know about EQ, blah, blah, blah. And I understand there's a difference you're saying between EQ and EI. What's the easiest way for me is it task related? Is that what it is that differentiates?
Well, what you say is that it's different, because the EQ is more based on how you see yourself, and it's built on self-awareness and social traits and personality traits. And there are other instruments that do that. There's a little bit of emotion, and it's a little overlap, but because it's a self-report, it's not an ability performance-based model. So they may be, and they see themselves differently. We all do. We all see ourselves a little differently. So if you can just show them that their 4 abilities and train them in that, develop those skills, then we don't care if it's called EQ. I don't want to get too caught up But you can ask them, what's your definition of EQ? You know, what do you know? And then you could say, oh, well, this is the 4 abilities based on the work of Jack and Peter from 1990, and this is what it is. And there's videos, you know, what the difference is. I did a video. If you go to David's YouTube channel, I think I'm on it. If you say Lisa Rees EI, you'll see me hear me talking about the differences. Yeah, and it's in the book. I think we may talk about the difference as well, what the differences are. Yeah.
Cool. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I understand an emotional quotient is, if we equate it like we're like whoever it was that made it up was EQ, then if you say, okay, well, IQ, and yes, IQ is important, but just because you know something and you're smart doesn't mean you can actually apply that in the workplace.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but we do know that people with low EI can be really successful. And that's the good news. So even if you have an executive who's dejected, like, oh my God, it's considered developed, I'm 2 deviations away from the norm, they could be super successful because they've learned compensatory strategies. They've learned, and then you can help them go deeper in that learning and those strategies. So that's why we don't leave people like, you're terrible. And we never say, you're not good at this. We say, the results suggest, is it possible? We make hypotheses. Let's make meaning of it. So yeah, that's why it takes a lot of skill to be able to, you know, not be shut down by these people like who get angry, defensive. You know, so what we do is we use the model while we're giving the feedback for ourselves so we don't get thrown off. So yeah. So I welcome any questions. Please reach out to me anytime, and I'd love to see you down the road. And it was really my pleasure. So thank you.
Thank you,
very much.
Lisa.
Have a great
Thank
rest
you
of the
so much
day.
for doing this for us. We really appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.